Hi, today is the 17th of February 2018 in New Zealand. Perhaps these are legacy chats so that in 20 years from now people know when I talked about this. And the technology wasn't there in the early 70s when we developed the Birthing Better skills, the families and I that developed the skills in Birthing Better childbirth preparation. But it would have been important to do that talk back then, because when I gave birth in 1970, my husband was referred to as a birth coach. He was one of the first fathers that was permitted into our local hospital. Before then, fathers went to the pub, sat in the waiting room, handed out cigars, arrived after the birth. But by the late 1960s, and certainly when I gave birth in 1970, everybody in the United States, now I live in New Zealand, so it has a slightly different history. Everyone in the United States took Lamaze classes, and fathers were specifically told to coach birth. And they were given specific skills and tasks to do. They timed contractions with stopwatches. They ragdolled us to see if we were relaxed on the outside of our body. They handed us paper bags to breathe when we became hyperventilated from using Lamaze breathing, which was they encouraged us to push when we were pushing. But by the time I had my last child in 1982, that word had been discarded and replaced by the term birth support. And it had been discarded because the skills had been discarded and replaced with birth plans. Now, as I've said in several other talks, you have to understand why skills were replaced with birth plans and the implication of that, how that, when we look back now, the huge unintended negative consequences of the skills-based trend that I gave birth in 1970, which was specifically directed in the United States and where I live in New Zealand by three male obstetricians, Grantley, Dick Reed, Lamaze, and Bradley, who developed the first universal birthing techniques, but they focused those techniques only on women who wanted a natural birth, pain-free labor, with less medical care. And that was the original sin. Instead of saying, birth is an activity every woman has to do, so let's get every woman and every man skilled to do this activity no matter where they birthed or who was present or what was happening. The focus immediately was on this very small group of people. And people who wanted to achieve those three goals tried to do that over a generation, and not enough women did. And so therefore, the new group of birth advocates that sort of rose up in the mid-1970s looked at skills as a pathway to this term natural birth, pain-free labor. Goodness, if you can have that. And I've been with a few women who have had no pain at all, and quite a number of women who cope very nicely. But a lot of us find labor really, really painful to the point of feeling we're going to die. And we feel more out of control when we lack skills. So if we wanted a natural birth and we had more medical care, we often gave up using what the techniques that we had been taught. So birth advocates dismissed skills and said, no, skills don't work to achieve these goals. What's going to work to achieve these goals is choice. So they advocated for women to basically say no to medical care. And they did that based on a statement which is still popular today, which is pregnancy and childbirth are normal life events. And we can't argue with that. That's true. However, we just have defined the word normal based on a myth. And the word normal, as it's used in that sentence, implies that basically pregnancy and childbirth are without risk, and that pregnancy doesn't involve a gazillion types of health issues that a gazillion women have that they bring into pregnancy or develop in pregnancy, or the baby might, or that things develop in birth. So it's implied that pregnancy and childbirth are just easy, uncomplicated, safe, leave it alone, she'll be right kind of a viewpoint. And that's the myth, and that's why I did a whole series on the myths around childbirth. But now we have to talk about the truths. So back then, when everybody in the United States was learning Lamaze and doing their best, or learning Bradley in New Zealand, women who wanted a natural birth and pain-free labor had to be given a prescription by an obstetrician in order to attend classes that would teach them how to do this. They actually did a study at a huge women's hospital in 1961 that showed that skills benefited how women behaved and how they interacted and how well the babies were doing after the birth. But nobody regarded that, and they didn't then extrapolate into the larger birthing population. So by 1982, skills had been dismissed. Childbirth classes were all about information, and choice was elevated. And that was based on the belief that women know what kind of birth they want, and all we have to do is write a birth plan and tell everybody else, and they'll give it to us. And that's a myth. We do know what we want. We want a safe birth. We want to come out of the birth safe for ourselves and our baby. And women will lay down their lives for their baby. So if an obstetrician says, we feel your baby's at risk, we really feel a cesarean's necessary, women will say, fine, that's fine. And then 6 months later, they'll go, was my baby really at risk? And now risk factors have narrowed. The cesarean rate's 30%. Even in New Zealand, that has primary care as midwifery, a continuity of care of midwifery. But when we talk about dads or others, they went from actually having skills to help us, to the best of their ability, to being told, we don't want you to be yelling, push, push, push. And you shouldn't be the coach. You should support the woman's choices. And the other one was to protect this safe space around for women to birth. Because another myth was given, which is women have to feel safe to birth. And you think, well, that makes no sense. I mean, women are giving birth in wars and famines and all sorts of unpleasant conditions. We give birth at the end of pregnancy. That's normal. But it doesn't mean we have to be safe. We can feel miserable. Or people saying home birth is the safest place. Well, a lot of women don't feel safe in their home. That may be a shocking fact to some people. But there are people who have lots of babies and they feel safe, but they just want to break and go to the hospital. Or they live in poverty and their home is safe for them, but they would like to go someplace that's clean and tidy, where people give them food for a few days before they go back into the living conditions. Or they live in a family where there's addiction or abuse and they don't feel safe. Or they themselves are abusive or have addiction problems or screamers at their other children. They just want to break. So this idea that women have to feel safe is another myth, or that home birth is the best place. It's another myth. But the truth is, when we shifted men from coaching to supporting, we took away their skills and we gave them tasks that were impossible. Can men support women's choices around childbirth? Sure, if women were consistent. Right? So over the years that birth plans have been created, and I've been at hundreds and hundreds of births. I'm not a midwife or a doula or a childbirth educator, but it doesn't stop you from being at births. The fact is that women would write these long birth plans. Even today, a simple birth plan usually has about 10 things on it. So what happens if women go, well, I want these 10 things, and they get into the birth and they go, no, I don't want this, don't want this, don't want this. How can a man support what she wrote when she's now saying she doesn't want it? How can men support, let's say she just had 10 things on her list, and she says, okay, I want all these 10 things, and let's say due to some factors, she gets 9 out of those 10 things, and then she's pissed off at him about that 10th thing that she didn't get. So giving men the task of supporting women's choices in birth is very, very hard because women don't stick to their choices. They change their mind. What they think they want beforehand, because all of us have an understanding of what we want at our birth, but 99.9% of births don't unfold the way that we would like. That's why women say, birth wasn't like what I imagined. I planned this and I got that. So, because there's a truth connected to childbirth, which is a global truth, which is you never know what your birth's going to be like. And that's a truth. And sadly, that's followed by an untruth, which is therefore there's nothing you can do to prepare for it. Because pregnancy leaves us feeling so out of control, once we get pregnant and this baby begins to grow inside us, we feel like we lose something of our personality or our ability to control anything. So we're seeking control, and we're trying to control this event by planning it. Or we used to try to control it if we wanted a natural, pain-free birth without medical care by having skills. That's our way of controlling it. And yet, there's no way to know what it's going to be like. So we don't have control over it. And it unfolds, birth unfolds in unexpected ways. And we have given the task to men now, as a support person, to support those choices which we're not consistent about, or we change or get changed for us, because plans change unexpectedly, because birth unfolds in unexpected ways. And we're asking men to protect a safe space, which they don't really know what that means, honestly. So we have taken men, fathers, partners, away from the essential task of helping their birthing partner stay in control and cope. Now, how can women best stay in control and cope? It's when they have skills. As humans, we feel overwhelmed and stressed, particularly when we're put into a dynamic situation when we lack skills. We do better. We feel more in control. We cope better. We manage better. We deal with, we work through, we handle better. We stay on top of an unfolding situation when we have personal skills. And because we're all one humanity, we blink, we cough, and we can tighten up our rectum. What happened in the 1970s when I worked with pregnant families, I was a body worker. I worked with people with bad backs, but they all had birth stories or thoughts about their coming birth. And I couldn't do anything about it, but we had our body. So when women talked about pain in the hip, then we could figure out how to create space in the hip. And if she had pain in the hip in next birth, perhaps doing this and creating space would help. So families got interested. We all shared one common human body. Men loved the practicalness of skills. Women loved that men could understand the skills. We all breathe 4 ways: in the nose, out the nose, in the nose, out the mouth, in the mouth, out the nose, in and out the mouth. Therefore, we could develop good breathing patterns that all of us could understand. And we could develop skills that were sustainable, adaptable, and adjustable to the situation, so that we could use skills together as a team, no matter where we birthed or who was present or what happened to us or around us. And we still, as Birthing Better Families in our Birthing Better courses, use the word birth coach. We want men to know how to help. And coach is a good word, because to coach someone implicitly means that you support them in their efforts. Now, not every coach is a nice person, and there are coaches that scream at their players. But that's not what we want men to do. We want men to work in a team. So we can't really call them a birth team worker. Nobody would understand it. And birth support really means that you don't help, don't have the skills to help, don't know how to help. So you get hung on, or you just stand around, or you try to do a little massage, or you try to go forehead to forehead, and you be there for the woman. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you feel that you've helped. Most men who get hung on and are just there actually feel useless and helpless. And women appreciate them being there. But families that have skills and share skills and work together, and a father can see and hear the difference on a woman's face as to whether she's coping or not coping, having a relaxed forehead compared to doing that, or hear the sounds, a woman doing this compared to doing ah, and then as a birth coach, sharing the same skills, having discovered the good breathing patterns in those 4 ways that all humans breathe, that means the father will immediately know that she needs a little help to stay in control or to handle the internal sensations or external factors that are happening to her around her. So it's really important that we begin to use the word birth coach again, because words matter. But if we're going to use the word birth coach, then fathers and others need the skills to know how to help us. And they need to know that they need to help us. If they go into a hospital and they're intimidated by the environment and the professionals around them, the professionals are not going to coach the woman. They leave the room. They come in and do assessments and monitoring and procedures and go away because they have other people doing the same thing and they have to check them. Your job is to be the birth coach. Your job is to help the woman stay in control and cope. That's what she's looking for. As women, we are looking for that. We go into the hospital, we're surrounded by professionals in a sterile environment. If we birth at home or a birth center, we feel more comfortable if we have a comfortable home to birth in. But often when the midwife comes, our belief is the midwife's going to tell us what to do. Now, coincidentally, as we removed men or fathers and others from the role of being the coach, the profession of doulas arrived. They became the intermediary between the lay midwives in the United States, because doulas developed in the United States, because they were tired of being continuity of care and being at long births. We love continuity of care midwives, but they shouldn't have to be at our births for hours and hours and hours. We should have the skills to cope and manage, handle, deal with, stay on top of, in control. We should be able to do that as human beings and as mothers and fathers who are becoming parents. It's as simple as that. But we didn't. We took skills away from dads. We took skills away from women. We told them to choose what they wanted and hoped that choices unfolded as they wished. We told men to support women's choices, and to support the sacred space, and not know what to do. And so we developed another professional group called doulas. It's great if you have a doula, but you should be working together. You shouldn't be reliant on her to be your coach. It's no different from the hours and hours and hours that a midwife had to spend. She has a family. She has other clients. She may love being at births, but really it is the birth of your baby, and you need to be skilled to birth your baby. So we are a charitable trust, Common Knowledge. I am the director. I did come to New Zealand in the 90s and put all these Birthing Better skills into a charitable trust. And you can support our trust's effort to grow a skilled birthing population for all births and to make certain that all women know that when you're pregnant, it is the normal time to learn skills, and it is normal to use skills to birth your baby. And that we want men to know that it is normal for fathers who are going to be at births to learn skills to help. And if you're not going to be at a birth, learn the skills to help the woman prepare her body and practice with her the skills that she's going to use, because she still has to birth the body, her baby, whether you're there or not. So you can donate to our charitable trust via PayPal at info@birthingbetter.com. You can look at our videos. I have a debunking myth playlist that does all the debunking myths around childbirth, and this will be in the childbirth truths playlist as I finish them all. And share this on other social media sites and comment on it. and tell us what truth around childbirth do you want and are you struggling with? Because all of us struggle with the childbirth conversation of today. And we want to reduce the shame, blame, guilt, disappointment, anger, frustration, and birth trauma that has absolutely skyrocketed since the choice-based childbirth trend was put in place in the mid-1970s. And the way we do that is by coupling skills with choice, because at the end of the day, you have to do the activity of giving birth. So do it with skills. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.